Hi, everyone. I'm going to pull up my screen here and share my presentation in just a second. So, Bill, if you could let me know when you can see everything, we'll get started.
I can see everything.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So, hi, everyone. My name is Priya Mathur, and I am a senior customer intelligence manager working at Google Cloud. So, the topic that I wanted to walk through today is very near and dear to my heart because, as you may have heard, AI and specifically generative AI is a very hot topic for the tech sector this past year. And, Google is sort of sitting very much right next to Microsoft at kind of the forefront of this conversation. So, AI and the role that AI plays in our lives is sort of this ever present topic this year. And really, the lens that I wanted to look at the topic of AI and generative AI for this presentation is really what does this mean for the modern market researcher? Because I suspect that a lot of us on this call right now have probably asked ourselves, like, well, shit, like, what is AI going to mean for me, right? Every profession on the planet is having to reconsider what is AI going to mean for them, and we are no different. So, before I get into some of my content for today, just to introduce myself, I wanted to share that I am a 20-year market research veteran. I've been in this category, or rather in this profession, for a good bit of time. But I will say that I see myself first and foremost as an avid customer advocate. So the way that I position myself in every interview and every sort of organization that I work in, I see myself genuinely in my purpose as a market researcher to really be that advocate for the customer especially within, sort of the client side of the business. Beyond that, I also see myself sort of a little bit differently from the other marketers that I work with in the sense that I am data driven, measurement grounded, and customer obsessed as a marketer versus many of my other marketing counterparts. And so, in many of the roles that you'll see me talk about on this chart, like my application of customer and market research skills has generally been in the marketing space. I graduated a little too long ago to mention from the University of Texas at Austin, so go Longhorns, in and with a degree in economics. I very quickly from there moved to sort of really learning my market research chops, like how to design a great survey, how to write a solid guide on the agency side at Millward Brown, which is a Kantar company and a WPP company. And this was back in Austin as well. Shortly thereafter, I made my first move to the client side, supporting ad sales research in Florida with Comcast, and specifically the ad sales arm of Comcast, which is called Comcast Spotlight. And then after that, I ended up moving to Seattle, where I joined Microsoft, and specifically within Microsoft, I joined the Xbox, again, ad sales team within Xbox. So, in a research capacity, working with our ad sales teams selling ad slots on Microsoft's advertising platforms. And then, sort of, that kind of wrapped up the B2C sort of spectrum of my career so far. And I moved very intentionally into the B2B space, which I was far less familiar with. And I did so working on Azure. So I spent a good, I'd say, probably the last 8 to 9 years working within the B2B space, or a total of 8 to 9 years working supporting Azure, Microsoft Azure. And that really just sort of placed me in this plum spot to really see the cloud category being born, which suffice it to say, we learned a lot, sort of seeing this tectonic shift in technology come to life, grow, and to the point now where it's mature. Um, and then, sort of just in time for this next tectonic shift in the tech sector, about 2 years ago, I moved to Google Cloud, where I stepped in here in the role of Senior Customer Intelligence Manager just in time to see the AI category explode. So, seeing a lot of corollaries to the birth of cloud and the birth of, well, not really the birth of AI. AI has been around a while, but really generative AI, making AI as a topic far more relevant and within reach of every single person on the planet. Um, Sort of that is sort of this new chapter of AI. So we've really seen the Gen AI specifically category or piece of AI explode within the last 9 months. And I've been on that ride for the last 9 months. So the reason why, sort of that's a really great segue to what I wanted to talk to you about today is that when we think about ourselves as researchers, we all know that there are aspects of our job that could very easily and probably should be usurped by AI. And so when I think about this, right, and we think about the standard research process of, starting with scoping, moving to design, going into fieldwork and data collection, then going through data processing, and ultimately to reporting and socialization. You've heard some of the other speakers today talk about socialization. And so, just sort of looking and mapping out this journey, both on the agency side as well as the client side, I've taken a sort of smattering of tasks. This is by no means comprehensive, but really was just meant to give me a couple of data points by which to really assess which of these pieces or parts of the journey is AI really well positioned to help us as market researchers. And I want to pause there to actually think about this, right? Like many of us have, and I've been doing the research to see that a lot of customers have concerns about AI essentially taking over their role or taking over their job, while a good chunk of other folks in the same functions have also had a little bit more of a lean towards how is AI going to empower me as a market researcher, as a marketer, as a operations specialist. So suffice it to say that it's really important for us as market researchers to really start to tease out the line in all these tasks that we're responsible for, whether you sit on the agency side or whether you sit on the client side. It really is incumbent upon us to evaluate our day to day with a lens of what pieces of this could I offload or automate in some way, and what does that free me up to spend more time and energy delivering value through. So again, none of the tasks on this list should be surprising to the folks on the call. Generating an RFP, I think everybody on the agency side has probably been exposed to that part of the process of scoping, right? Proposing methodologies for a project, seeking efficiencies to drive project profitability, things like crafting questions for your draft questionnaire, evaluating, sort of quality sample and creating sample checks, identifying the key data views that you want to generate your crosstabs with, crafting a report wireframe and building charts and slides, all the way to presenting findings and making edits and additions and corrections. These are all some of the kinds of tasks that I think we've undertaken on the agency side. And then on the client side, sort of similar functions on the other side of the fence are like evaluating RFPs for fit to business context, managing costs, looking for efficiencies, reviewing the research instrument, overseeing a collaborative effort to lock a survey with your internal stakeholders, looking at partial data, reevaluating the research scope and design based on those first couple of interviews that you complete or that first set of completes that you see coming into your survey, co-creating and reporting, co-creating a report wireframe or crafting research recommendations, and ultimately even things like presenting findings and connecting research to a broader array of research you might have, so connecting the dots, so to speak. These are all tasks that either on the agency side or on the client side we've undertaken. I'm going to pause here for a quick moment. Bill, do we have any questions or comments before I move on to the next slide?
Nothing yet.
Okay, fantastic. So just to keep going, so when we look at that same list, and the thing that I tried to do here is sort of pull apart some of the things that I can imagine right off the bat that AI could help us out with, right? Generating an RFP. We can load up RFP templates and sort of put in a set of parameters and have an AI tool generate an RFP, like a sample or a draft RFP for us. We can have an AI capability that crafts questions for us. If we type in the business objectives of a given piece of research, or say that, hey, we're looking to do a segmentation, or we're looking to do a persona, like a persona piece of research, or we're trying to do sort of market opportunity analysis. What are some standard questions within these types of research projects that I should, sort of put on the drawing board? We can have AI help us conduct sample checks, right? Monitor very closely soft launch and point out any unnatural variances. We could have AI identify some key data views that, given the questions that are already sort of preloaded into our survey, what are some standard charts and data views that would be really meaningful for us to, for the AI to automatically generate for us? That AI capability can also generate charts and slides, create a report wireframe. Now, how close that is to fit for purpose is going to be a big question mark, and something that will iterate, with an AI tool over time. But the point of bolding these particular bullets is just to say that right out the gate, we could probably have an AI product or service get us at least 30 or 40% of the way there today, right? And the reason why I did this exercise is really so I can start, trying to tease apart what are the kinds of tasks here that AI is particularly helpful for, and what are the kinds of tasks that I really want to reserve more of that human sensibility and human, sort of context building for. Even on the client side, right, inspecting partial data quality, we can assign that or automate that in some way. Co-creating a report wireframe, identifying stories, coming up with initial recommendations, customizing those recommendations to individual audiences. These are all some things that AI could help us in large part, or at least in small part, with. And again, these are subjective, so I am by no means presenting myself as a subject matter expert saying definitively that these are things AI can do today. It's merely observations. And then the reason why I named this session Exploring the Line Between Human and AI Value is because it is just that. At this point in the sort of introduction of generative AI and AI into our world, it is, I think, a little unfair to expect anyone to purport themselves as a subject matter expert. At this point, this is more ideation and observation. So, feel free to disagree with what I've, sort of bolded here in terms of bullets that AI could do for us. That's not the purpose of this conversation. I think the purpose of this conversation is really to provoke thought and ask us to evaluate our day to day and look at, maybe for you, some of these bullet points might be bolded a little bit differently. But look at what is your day to day, chart out those various tasks, and really consider and ask yourself, where is it necessary for me to intervene? And where is it perhaps helpful and empowering to have some of these functions automated or relegated to AI? So some of the kinds of observations that I came up with was, and I did this in the wrong order, so I'm gonna just blow this out. But a couple of the things that I observed right out of the gate of where AI could really do the types of things that I personally don't want to do, right? Number one, where AI can help is really with those standardized and more templated tasks, the things that we would categorize as rinse repeat, right? And those are things like standard questions, right, from a question bank, sample evaluation or sample monitoring. With many of our large scale trackers, both on the client side as well as on the agency side, I've generated what we call smoke jump templates, which is where you look at all of your sample metrics as your data is coming in, and you have these very complex and sort of to some degree overwhelming spreadsheets of data points where you're looking wave over wave. How much is my sample for this wave's results deviating from previous waves? And we're looking at that variance, right? We're looking at that data variance very closely. We've typically done it using conditional formatting today, but there's no reason why AI couldn't spot some of those red flags for us and surface them for us real time, right? Generating things like a report template. I mean, especially if you're on the agency side and you have a standard way that you build out segmentation decks, a standard way that you build out value prop or concept value testing research, right? Have an AI tool generate and populate some of that for you without you having to sort of stare at a blank screen first. Other things would be like repetitive tasks that are typically prone to human error. So, like I mentioned, sample quality checks, data variance checks. Sometimes when you're looking at these very overwhelming charts and slides, it can be easy for the human to overlook some small things, right? Like overlook small variances, do, quick calculation that you might have done incorrectly, right? Or just, sort of at times we just don't have full focus in some of these repetitive tasks. So here as well, AI can play an outsized role in helping us just sort of deliver better quality in some of these repetitive tasks. And then the third space where AI really should be taking more of the reins is even taking a run at that first draft of even some creative tasks like drafting my survey or drafting my guide, knowing the kind of research that I'm doing. Just give me sort of the standard question bank, right? Already generated into a doc for me, or already, generated into, an Excel spreadsheet or Google Sheets, right? So these are all things that first draft can absolutely be done with the use of AI. Simple things like a draft analysis and report. I've actually been thoroughly impressed by AI's, and specifically generative AI's, abilities to craft recommendations based off of the data that are, very cogent, that actually sound like a human wrote them, right? Like they're not dry and sort of this, very, bot like sort of rendering of a sentence. These are conversational. These are great first runs. However, what those first runs leave a ton of room for is context, right? What they lack is an understanding of the business, an understanding of the humans that are actually going to be reading some of these decks. So that first run, though, can absolutely be taken by an AI. And then even things like drafting recommendations, right? These are all things that I would love to not have to stare at a blank screen, but have an AI capability or service take a first run at. The things where we as humans become far more sort of capable of delivering unique value. And this is, I raise these simply by looking at like the previous two slides, right? And looking at patterns of what did I see were things that got bolded and things that didn't get bolded. The things that didn't get bolded were sort of activities or tasks that required collaborating with others, right? And AI is not quite at the point yet where it can attend a meeting, understand business context, understand urgency, understand political landscape, right? And help you with things like ideation, adaptation based on the changing needs within the business, or coordination, which might have some political wrangling elements of it, right? Anybody who's worked in a mid to large size organization knows that there is some amount of political angling that takes place, even with research, right? How you're going to land recommendations, what you're going to say, even the word choice of your recommendations and your data points, right? Like your slide headlines have to be sometimes carefully crafted, being mindful of different org, relationships. Who takes ownership of what, right? Where is something given equal accountability versus singular accountability? These are all the types of things where knowing people, right, and understanding how to work with people and that EQ element of the research that we do is critical. The second space where we see AI not really up to the mark or able to quite, sort of serve the human function is adapting to change, right? An AI tool is not going to understand that, hey, there was so and so org change, right? And now so and so teams roll up to this other team. We need to change how we've crafted our recommendations, or we need to, sort of respond to changing team dynamics and roles and responsibilities, or we need to adapt to changing timelines. At this point, that is still something that requires a human to notice, a human to recognize has implications for the research, and a human to then sort of mitigate, based off of the changes that are taking place in the research. So again, adapting the research based on changing priorities, changing team dynamics, and changing timelines is something that really a human is still needed for today. And then the last thing sort of I observed across the bullet points in the previous two slides is really docking to the bigger picture. AI could give us that first pass, but it can't quite fully understand the context of, sensitivities within a particular industry or within a particular audience or within a particular organization, right? So understanding the business, understanding the category, and understanding your customer is still very much within the realm of human value, right? Where creating connections is something that humans are uniquely capable of doing that an AI function couldn't possibly do today, because unless you're hooking up every piece of knowledge you have of your customer, and that includes qualitative research, quantitative research, telemetry, social data. Unless you're taking all of these pieces that you're using to know your customer, and that includes like account team interactions, right? All of these pieces where you touch your customer, loading them all up to a singular system and having the AI be able to read all of those customer interactions and all of that customer insight collectively, it's impossible for an AI to have that bigger picture, right? Where are those disparities to other research? Where do we need to potentially partner with another team who is doing an adjacent piece of research and connect the dots? An AI capability is not going to be able to do that today. Another thing is extending your research. So thinking about other use cases for the set of, insights or recommendations that you've come up with, right? You generated this report for the sales team. How does that apply to marketing, or how does that affect operations? Is not something that sort of business context, that rich understanding of the business, is something that AI can't replicate today. And then the last piece of that is relevance, right? Making sure that these insights are surfaced to the right people at the right point in time to affect real time decision making. Again, this is all context, timeliness that AI can't fully serve. But what we can say is that if AI can be leveraged to do these top three things, right, like help us with more standardized and templated tasks, help us with repetitive tasks that are prone to human error, and help us with, sort of that first draft of some of these creative tasks, then that gives us as researchers a lot more time and energy and mind share to apply towards where we really have the ability to add that value, which is collaborating with others, adapting the research to the evolving needs of the business, and in imbuing it with rich business context. Again, I'll pause here before I move on. Bill, any comments, questions?
No, it looks like we're still clear.
Okay. So one of the other things that I wanted to kind of point out before we kind of go to a little bit more of the Q&A portion of this presentation is the notion that all methodologies are not going to be affected equally by AI. And again, this is my, sort of, I've worked across a number of these methodologies and in my sort of 20-year career span. And just sort of stepping back and looking at where do I really think AI is going to play an outsized role versus a relatively smaller role, and being mindful of really sort of these blue boxes versus these red boxes, right? Like, where is there more intrinsic human value in creative functions, context building functions, sort of change management functions, and people engagement functions, right? It becomes a little bit clearer that not all of our methodologies are going to be impacted by AI equally. And so this is more, again, just food for thought, or a different angle at really evaluating our day. Because in a given day, I might be doing IDIs in one piece of research. I might be sending out a survey for my second meeting today. As part of my third meeting today, I had a conversation about social benchmarking. And, my last meeting today is going to be about a competitive intelligence piece of research. AI is going to have a different role to play in each of those. And so I didn't necessarily go as far as, starting to like break down and evaluate how and where can AI play a part, a bigger part or a smaller part in each of these methodologies. But that is perhaps something for us to consider next, right? Is where is the unique human value in these different methodologies, and how can we up level and really empower ourselves with technology as researchers for these methodologies differently. And with that, I wanted to actually turn it over to the room a little bit and ask you all a couple of questions, because these are more sort of things that I'd like this group to consider either immediately now on this call, or certainly in the time that you sort of perhaps ruminate on the meaning of AI for our profession over the next couple of weeks and months. But question number one is, what skills will make us AI proof? Right? Let's really think about that, right? And based off of what I've talked about, I put a couple of things on here, but this is, again, by no means an exhaustive list. So I'd love to invite folks to, sort of add responses to this list, or potentially, sort of weigh in with really where do you feel you're going to want to maybe invest in some of these skills to AI proof yourself. But a couple of the ones that immediately came to mind for me, based off of what I've just shared with you today, are things like change management, influencing for impact, storytelling, organizational behavior, prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is a big one. My world right now is centered around prompt engineering, because this is something that the entire sort of especially in some of the social data I've been looking at recently, prompt engineering is becoming something that every person who engages with technology today is trying to figure out: how do I get AI to work for me and work well for me? As we as market researchers know, so many times the quality of the answer comes down to the quality of the question, right? And that is what prompt engineering is all about. The output you get from the AI is only going to be as good as the prompt you put in. So if I was to pick a particular favorite in here, I would certainly choose this one. And then AI, QA, and design, because even as a number of these tasks that I pointed out, that I bolded in the previous slides, become automated, or sort of market research companies find ways to offer products and services that automate these functions, somebody is going to have to pivot their day-to-day job from being a market research analyst or a data analyst to being the person who does the quality assessment on the AI doing the same thing, right? Who designs the AI functionality and writes the requirements for the AI functionality that enables us to do those things in a more automated fashion. But here again, I'll pause. Bill, were we able to get the poll question up, and do we have any answers?
We did, and we have, let's see, most popular is change management, followed in a tie for second with, let's see, influencing for impact and storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, if just going back to the sort of the blue boxes that I'd highlighted previously, those are kind of the big ones, right? Like those are spaces where AI can't possibly compete, right? AI is, at least today, AI can't possibly compete, because AI could give you storytelling, but it can't read the room, right? Like AI can write a compelling set of bullets, but it can't, like I said, read body language. It can't read the room. It can't, sort of change and evolve as the conversation in the room progresses, right? So storytelling is a big one. Reading the room, really that EQ of understanding and knowing your audience. Those are all skills that are going to become increasingly important for us as market researchers and set us apart from something that can be automated. Let's go to our second question. So the next question that I want you to ask yourselves is, let's really sort of, as I've done in this exercise so far, let's reconsider what we want to do versus what we have to do, right? Every single one of us has parts of our day that we despise and parts of our day that we thoroughly enjoy, right? So what pieces of our day do we really want AI to serve, right? And what pieces of it do we want to reserve for ourselves? So again, just based off of my personal experience, I listed out a few, right? I want to do less administrative things. I want to do less quality checking. I want to do fewer of those sort of rinse repeat kind of activities and do less oversight and monitoring. And then personally, I personally come alive or really experience joy in my job when I get to do more innovating. I get to, opportunities to be more creative, more ideation and brainstorming, and driving more impact. But let's pose this question to you and see, where do folks feel, you all really feel, that AI could do more of versus less of? I'm just curious, what do you want to sort of, like, what is it that you want to see AI enable for you? Again, Bill, I'm going to pause here and turn it over to you. Do we see any results coming in?
We do, in fact. All right, so we've got at the top more innovation and more creativity, followed by less administrative, and then a few votes apiece for less quality checking and less rinse and repeat.
Great. And again, here, like, I would really sort of challenge all of you to sit back after, after your day's done today and think about, what are those spots that AI can, sort of empower you, can serve you as a market researcher. And be the person who champions that, right? Reach out to your agencies and say, hey, how do we build something like this? Or be the person within your organization that says, I want to do less of this. I want to bring in an AI tool and experiment with an AI tool that allows us to do more of this or less of this, right? Be that change agent within your organization and get in front of this, right? Really embrace the technology that is coming at us at the speed of light, because we can either sort of have AI be inflicted upon us, or we can be champions of really sort of taking AI and making it work for us, right? So back-footed versus front-footed, right? I really challenge everyone on this call to take a stab at being more front-footed. And then the last question that I have for you is, what are some of the risks of AI that we can mitigate? Because like everything else, I mean, I remember, as a market researcher, when social listening was this new kid on the block, right? It was this brand new methodology and it was being purported as the thing that's going to solve everything, right? It's going to have all the answers. And it didn't, right? It has some great answers for some very important functions, but it is a tool in the researcher's toolbox. Similarly, AI is not golden, right? AI doesn't have the answers to everything. AI has its pros and it definitely has its cons, right? So I'm curious, from your perspective, what are some of the cons or risks of AI that we as humans can sort of really take charge of, right? We can, as I was just mentioning, identify research use cases. We can smooth and scale adoption of AI across our organizations. We can review and be sort of that quality assurance and design kind of contact within our organizations to watch and sort of help evolve AI into something that is actually productive for our business by reviewing it and correcting it of its hallucinations and errors. We can complete it with context, right? Which is, again, something that uniquely we're in a position to do. And we can solve for security, privacy, and legal vulnerabilities. Again, this is by no means an exhaustive list of the risks or the challenges that come with AI, like with any other new technology. But I'm curious, where does this group sort of feel like is your first thing that you want to do with AI, right? Do you want to road test a couple of these solutions and review them for hallucinations and errors? Do you want to be sort of at the forefront of smoothing and scaling adoption of AI for your business? Where do you really want to put your energy if you were to pick one of these things to focus on within the next, let's say, within the next 3 to 6 months? Again, Bill, I'll lean on you to tell us how folks are feeling about this.
All right, we got coming in at number one, complete with context, followed by review for hallucinations and errors, and then third most popular being identify research use cases.
Fantastic. I love the fact that this group is sort of really embracing this topic because, like I said, we as researchers can choose to kind of let this happen to us, right? And let the chips fall as they may, which is a very unintentional and sort of accidental relationship to have with AI, or we can choose to get in front of it. And I love the fact that you're all engaging and hopefully starting to really think about the role that AI could play in your life and how it can help you accelerate and sort of really make yourself stand out as a market researcher. So with that, that's all that I had for all of you, but I wanted to open up the floor for any questions comments. And like I said, I am by no means a subject matter expert on this topic. So feel free to, disagree. Feel free to come in and chime in with your own thoughts. But I wanted to open the floor up for others. Any comments or questions or disagreements? Bill?
All right, and while we're waiting for some of those questions to come in, I have a couple of my own. Um, and for you, Priya, how much of the bolded material on your intro slide have you either implemented or are planning to in the coming, we'll say, year?
So I am currently in the stage where I'm identifying all of these as use cases for our business, right? So, like every other company on the planet, Google and Google Cloud are rapidly sort of asking the question of, hey, everyone, what ideas do we collectively have as a marketing organization for how we can leverage AI in our own business and in our own day to day? So I've been surfacing all of these as use cases for research. At this point, where I'm sort of where I'm at in terms of progress is these are all being evaluated by our team to figure out where can we get funding and support, like specifically engineering support, right, to actually build out some of these capabilities. The other thing that I'm doing is engaging a lot of our research agencies to say, what pieces of this do they feel that they can do or they can deliver within relatively short order? So not only are we trying to build some of these capabilities for ourselves on the client side, I'm also sort of actively and avidly reaching out to my agencies saying, hey, show me if any of these are possible with you today. And the ones that are going to stand out are the ones that are going to say, hey, you know what? We've been playing around with this. We've got something to show you. So again, like benefits of being front footed. And I want to say, like, I spent a good chunk of time at Microsoft, have a lot of love for Microsoft, despite the fact that I work at Google today. So want to be very clear about that. My loyalties are very clear, but I have a lot of love for Microsoft. And one of the things that I really enjoyed about my tenure of about 10 years working at Microsoft is Satya Nadella's growth mindset, sort of mentality that he impressed upon the entire company several times, is this idea of let's not be afraid to experiment, right? I'd rather have a multitude of failed experiments and be able to show that and be able to show and celebrate that failure, but show progress rather than be the ones who say, like, we're not going to start something, we're not going to try something until it's perfect. So I happen to have the privilege of working in two companies, both Microsoft and Google, where experimentation is how we get things done. And so I am blessed, honestly, to have teams and teammates and leaders that are pushing us to actually take these use cases and turn them into capabilities. I'd say realistically, the timeline on being able to see some of these in action is probably going to be closer to 9 to 12 months, but we're actively discussing them.
Well, and it's that time of year. I guess you use the analogy of, all right, next year planning is underway, right? We're figuring out, we're creating those big spreadsheets and matrices of, resource allocation, right? What do we have upcoming? What's the likelihood that it's going to come along? Take a swag at what the cost might be and what's going to be stacked up against it. Is it an actual human or is it something more electronic? And, I feel like that's the stage where we are with all of this. We're kind of figuring it out, but if we're not at least thinking about it and creating agendas for it, we do risk being potentially left behind.
And I've been asked by, I mentor a couple of students from the University of Washington, and I've been asked by a couple of them, sort of, aren't you afraid that by volunteering for some of these proof of concepts and experiments, that you're working yourself out of a job? And it's a good question. It was a painful question, but it was a really good question because I do often find myself, right, in these positions wanting to raise my hand and saying, I'm happy to be the, sort of be the guinea pig for this generative AI use case, or I'm happy to be the person who writes this rec that is eventually going to take, 20% of my day off my plate, right? And I'd say to that, and what I told them was that if 100% of my day is spent within these red boxes, one, it's not a great day, and two, it's something that I should then actively consider sort of how do I upskill myself, right? Whereas I know today 80% of my day is spent in the blue boxes. I don't feel concerned that I'm going to work myself out of a job because I know that a lot of what I do today can't be replicated anytime in the near future. And by near future, I say within the next 2 years by AI. I haven't seen any evidence that of any AI tools, and I've been playing around with a bunch, right? Like I haven't seen any evidence from any AI tool that they can do what we do, especially in these blue boxes. So a big sort of challenge I sort of make to the folks on this call is that evaluate, what proportion of your day sits in these red boxes. And if it's a large proportion, then start thinking about where and how you upskill. And really sort of that brings us to this question that I'd posed of what are those skills that will make us AI proof?
I know a lot of the blue box material is, it's things that folks who are more seasoned in the business are, kind of falling into this territory, right?
Yes.
You know, for those of us who have, made our way to the more consultative side of research, probably there's a little bit more security to be felt. But, for younger analyst level folks who, they live and breathe in red, right? Um,
Yep.
what advice would you give for, how to, I guess, approach the the career path, as it were?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question and a really important one. I would say that first off, hone the skills, like hone the people skills, right? Like hone the change management types of skills. And so again, when I come back to, sort of what are those skills that will make us AI proof, right? Like this whole list applies to people that are earlier in career and market research, but perhaps none more than the last two, right? Prompt engineering, right? Generative AI certifications, right? And trainings, right? Like things around AI QA and design, because AI is nowhere near, like, we don't have the volume of use cases at this point to really say that, hey, these tasks are no longer important. We are firmly in the era of where AI capabilities are being designed, shaped, and sort of these prompts are being written to make humans successful. So if you're coming out of college right now, or if you're still early in career, learning the skills around how to write great prompts to get AI to work for you, how to look at, various AI products and services, go work for an AI company, right? And there are a number of startups, right, in the AI space right now that are just exploding, right? Like work roles in those or even at agencies that are just now starting to onboard and build some of their own AI functionality, right? Raise your hand for QA and design roles where you are actively sort of checking AI product and running the proof of concepts of these services and capabilities within your organization, because these use cases are only going to multiply, right? When you're done with one, there's going to be three more. When you're done with those three, there's going to be 15 more use cases for AI in the research journey. So I'd say for folks that are just coming in net new into our profession, prompt engineering and AI QA and design are probably two spaces that I would over index on, both getting like certifications, training, and practical experience in. And it's something that some of us more seasoned market researchers are probably going to be less prone to go towards.
Indeed. But even, the more seasoned, we're obviously tasked with, you know, training the next generation. So we need to be just as aware and just as involved in the process.
Indeed.
Well, I'm not seeing any other questions coming through, which I believe could be a good test case for our audience's propensity to take part in quantitative research and polls, not so much in the qualitative. I don't know, take that for what it is, for what
Mhm.
it's worth.
It's all good.
All right. Well, Priya, this was fascinating. I think this is a great topic that, you know, we're going to keep talking about this over and over for the next several years, and you know, who knows how long into the future from there. Um, so yeah, my encouragement to everyone is if you're not, if it's not top of mind right now, it needs to be, because it's happening, and whether we like it or not, right?
Indeed. And with that, you can all find me on LinkedIn if you just type in. I can certainly. I don't know if you have my LinkedIn profile handy, Bill, and can put it in the chat. But if you don't, you can simply search for Priya Mathur Google Cloud, and you'll find me. Um, so if you'd like to connect on LinkedIn, come find me. I'd love to continue the conversation.